All right. Are we all together in the same place at the same time?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we've got our audience. Yeah, I see we've already got our audience in here. Welcome everybody to another one of our live chats. This is the first one we've done where it's just Tom mano a mano against the audience and against me and Vanessa as well. It's a wonderful day for all of us. We're all in a great mood. Why? Well, I'm going to let Tom explain that. Tom's got some great news for us. So, Tom, take it away.
Yeah. Okay. We're in a great mood because yesterday we have 150,000.
Yay!
Over that. Isn't that right, Scott?
Yeah, I believe we're at about
we're almost 20K on top of that. So we're doing really.
Now, Tom, could you let's talk a little bit about?
I've lost your voice in video, Scott.
Oh boy!
But that's all right. If you don't mind, I'll just go on a little bit. Maybe it'll come back, while I'm talking. So we're doing well. We met our goal, but I want to remind the viewers that the way this works is, of course, if you meet your goal, you get to actually get some money from it. If you don't meet your goal, it all goes back. So when you're setting a goal here, you set it at the minimum amount of money that you think you can really do something useful with it. So that's what we did, and that was the 150,000. That's what it would take, to buy equipment, get a person and do at least some of the experiments, but not necessarily all of them. So we thought we could do something useful with that, but we didn't want to try to aim too high and risk not getting anything. So we put the 150 up. And of course, what this money does is it's going to buy all the equipment necessary, and that lab equipment is very precise, very precision equipment, which means it's also very expensive. Expertise, some experimental physicist who's done this kind of work with this kind of equipment. Otherwise, we'd have a very long learning curve in just trying to learn how to work all the equipment together. And we need space to do it in. So all of those things tend to be expensive. So that's what that's what the money goes to. So the amount we really think we need to do probably all of the experiments, and we're just guessing at these amounts because until we go out in that world and try to hire scientists and pay for space or buy the equipment, we don't really know exactly how much it's going to cost. But I'm guessing that about 300,000, about double, is really what we need in order to do all the experiments. But the 150 will enable us to do some of the experiments, and then doing those experiments may indeed make it a lot easier if they turn out to be significant. Would make it a lot easier then to get scientists involved and to work more on this. So that's kind of where we are. So thank you very much, all of you who have contributed to make this thing a success, to get us off of ground zero and launch this thing to actually do some physics experiments. Thank you. We feel pretty confident that this process will start up soon. It's going to be a little bit of a slow start. We've got a lot of research and people to talk to and places to go, but you should see some action and be getting some reports from us all along. We are thinking about some ideas that we could use to make what we're doing transparent and make the results transparent. And one of the ideas that we're just tossing around and haven't decided yet because we don't really know where the facility is going to be yet and whether it would be allowed or supportable or not, but we'd like to put a live cam where we're doing the experiment so that the rest of the world could actually watch it happen as it happens. That might be possible depending on the room that we get. So this is the start of something big, and it's only because of you folks that we're actually going to get to do something. So thank you.
Tom, can you see me now or hear me now?
Okay. Yes, I hear you.
I disappear off of people's radars all the time. It gets a little distracting, but yeah, on a personal note, obviously we're, the crew here is all very excited The next thing that we're now getting excited for is that if we're going to go to all this trouble, let's try to do as many of these experiments as we can, because I think they get more and more exciting as we go. So let's keep the numbers coming in, and we're just excited to be able to get this going. So without further ado, why don't we go to Vanessa and find out what our first question is?
Thanks for all the questions, guys. Heaps of questions came in. There was a question that was repeatedly asked at least 3 times by Rich was the first one to ask it, and I know Daniel has asked it, and Sanjay as well. And so Rich asked it here saying, Tom, with regards to these variations on the delayed choice quantum eraser, when viewing the data, does the nature of the observer matter? Could someone merely look at the data with no understanding, say an animal or a fly on the wall?
Okay, well, that's a question that's never really been tested before with experiment. So we'll just have to go with the theory. And of course, from my viewpoint, that's going with the virtual reality theory. So virtual reality theory says that the system does not want things to happen here that cause conflicts here. That you end up with 2 facts that disagree with each other, but they're both facts. You can't have that. That's a conflict within our reality. So that's what it's trying to avoid in our reality. Now, let's say, a dog watches, this experimental results and nothing else sees it but the dog. Is that going to cause a conflict in our reality? I would think probably not, because the dog isn't really going to notice that there's, 2 facts about that disagree with each other. So I would suspect that unless it was somebody that really knew what was going on and knew what they were looking at, it really wouldn't cause a conflict in our reality. So therefore, it's probably limited to people and probably limited to people who actually know what the data is. Not necessarily, though. You could have a person that had no idea what the data is, but still remembered what it was. And one of those people that did remember could say, well, what did it look like? You see, now the information would get here. So it's not that clear. There's a lot of gray area in this. But I would think that dogs and cats and monkeys are probably disqualified because they wouldn't be able to answer what did it look like. And because, unless the monkey was really good at drawing pictures, perhaps, we have an artistic monkey, maybe that would be an exception. So anyway, the point is, if there's no conflict created, then there's really no problem from the viewpoint of virtual reality. So that's how I would answer it. That's a theoretical answer. Nobody's done the experiment, and we're going to do a lot of those kinds of experiments in experiment 3. We're going to do a lot of man in the loop, man interface. Does it matter whether the man's taking records or he's just watching it? Do you have to have data? If you have data, does it have to be recorded or does it not have to be recorded? If you have 2 people there and they both just look at pieces of the data but not enough to see the whole thing, is that a problem? So there's lots of gray areas that nobody really knows how they'll turn out until we do this experiment. So that's one of those experiments that's kind of just to get some data points on what really defines which way data that can make that diffraction pattern, become decoherent and turn it into, 2 blobs of a 2 blob pattern, a particle pattern. So we don't know yet.
It's interesting because this is like a big virtual reality CSI episode that we can kind of go in and just start sort of breaking things down. And some things, I think you mentioned this, Tom, and I don't, know if everybody quite realizes this. You're not really even, predicting that everything that you think is going to happen, that we're going to be doing some experiments and then sort of improvising to figure, once we get the result, that we're going to expand it out from there, correct?
Absolutely. If you look at the history of science, it's hardly ever that there was this great big unknown and one guy walked in and did a few things once and that changed everything. It doesn't work like that. I don't expect all of my experiments to probably work out the way I think. In making these experiments, I had to take some guesses as what I thought the larger consciousness system would do, how it would respond. This sort of work's never been done before. There has been nobody create quantum mechanics experiments based on how virtual reality might render the results. You see, so that's a whole new perspective at looking at this. So this thing's just never been done. And when something's never been done, you don't have a lot to go on. You know, the possibilities are multiple. So what we're going to do with these experiments, though, is learn a lot. So when we do them, if they work the way, you know, my first guess is the way we predict, then that means we're a good guesser and we got it right. But if it goes a different way, that means we're going to learn something very important about the way virtual reality, you know, decides how it renders things. So every one of these experiments is going to be valuable and is going to tell us something. That's how science works. And then you look at those experiments and you make up new experiments. You say, oh, well, okay, we learned this now about how a virtual reality would render this, but that, you know, instead of those 3 possibilities, now there's only 2 left. So let's go, you know, check the next one out. So that's how science works. Is it's going to be not just the simple thing of doing, you know, a few experiments and you're done. This is going to be a process that we will learn as we go. All science works that way. So I don't expect, you know, mine to be any different. You know, it's just the way science works. And as we do these things and have good results that other people are interested in, other people will do them in order to verify it. So it's not just going to be me doing them. As soon as they get done, and if it's interesting to other scientists and they say, wow, didn't expect that, then they're going to start doing them. And then other people will start doing them. That's also how science works. It takes, you know, it takes a lot of repetition before scientists are willing to call something a fact. Just because one person did it in one experiment does not make it a fact until it's replicated by multiple people, multiple places. So this is not going to be, you know, we'll get the money, we'll hire some people, we'll do all the experiments and we'll be done. And the whole thing should take, you know, 6 months. I don't think it's going to be that simple. Never has been yet in the field of science. I suspect there'll be, you know, we'll change some of what we're doing, try different things. What we're really trying to do here is dig out the facts. What are the facts? How would virtual, or how does our larger conscious system render? You know, what are the principles upon that it depends upon rendering this virtual reality? That's what we're trying to understand. So yes, Scott, it's not just a one-off, you know, whiz bang, we're all done. It's this is real science, and real science takes some time and some repetition. So that's really what we're all about, is learning, finding out, and eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to come up with the answers that you know, rock the boat and make a really, you know, big splash. At least that's the, you know, that's the plan. That's what we're trying to do. And I think we'll probably do that, but I don't know exactly the path it'll take to get there. I don't know exactly what we're going to learn. Just a lot of interesting stuff there that will be amazing as it happens. So I'm really looking forward to this. You know, it's all about knowledge. It's all about gaining understanding. It's not about glory. It's not like, well, you know, we did N experiments and we got N minus one of them right. Oh, okay, we get 5 gold stars. You know, that's not what it's about. It's not about that. It's about coming up with information that allows us to take the next step. So at least it's a beginning. And if we get other scientists interested in this, just because we do something that has some interest in it, and we get other scientists to say, oh, that's kind of interesting, you know, to work there, well, that will be a great plus. That'll be a big win. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to pull science into the virtual reality viewpoint. So if we can accomplish that, that will be, you know, that will really be what we're after in the bigger picture.
That made me think. I was thinking today that, you know, during this whole process, you need to sleep as much as you can, because if any of these, you know, come out the way you expect, you're probably not going to get any sleep for 3 or 4 years, would be my guess. But let's go.
That would be a nice problem to have.
Amen to that. Well, Vanessa, let's go on to our next audience question here.
Sure, yeah. The very first question that was asked from Andrew Rundle Keswick. So he says, will the outcome of the experiments be affected by the belief of the experimenter? That is, if Tom, who believes in VR, does the experiment, will you get a different result than if a materialistic physicist who does not believe would do the experiment?
I don't think so in this case. That happens, or that's a higher probability when there's a lot of uncertainty into how things work. If you're doing something that has a great deal of uncertainty in the process of doing it, then an intent will modify the future probability to be, however that intent is focused and framed. But in this case, we're just doing straight up physics experiments. All the machines, are going to work however they work. And I don't think there's a lot of uncertainty there as far as the machines, the particle generators, the things that are sensitive to the particles, the detectors. All of that stuff is pretty hard science, and I think it has very little variability, very little uncertainty. So I think no matter how much I want a particular answer to come out, I don't think it'll make much difference. Besides, the people who will actually be doing it hands-on, tuning the equipment, setting it all up, and actually, turning it on and running it, the experimenters who will be hands-on doing it, they will all be very skeptical. And if anything, they will be the opposite way. They will probably mostly be very certain that it will not work. So, that's, if anything, that goes the other way, but I don't think that'll be a problem either, because it's not that kind of experiment that has much uncertainty in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Danny here is asking, Tom, how did you figure out the setup for the new experiments? Is this related to the previous experiments, like the double slit?
Well, I was just looking for a way to do something that is fundamentally very, very difficult. You see, what I'm trying to do is an experiment in physical reality that shows up or points a finger at something that's non-physical. Think about that. That's a hard thing to do. How are we going to do a physical experiment in this virtual reality that points its finger to something non-physical as the cause? That's kind of teeter-tottering on the impossible. The physical doesn't do things that verify the non-physical. The physical can only do things that verify stuff that's physical. So that's a really hard thing that we're trying to do. So I took the double slit experiment because it's simple, and as experiments go, it's inexpensive and easy. It's not some experiment that'll take 20 years before we, find out how to do it, make the equipment to do it, or cost millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to stay within that realm because it's a simpler realm to work in, and because we had the double slit experiment to begin with, which actually did point a finger at, the source being non-physical. It said particles really aren't massy particles; they're probability distributions. That's how you have to think of them, or you can't compute the results. So it did something. This experiment performed what I'd say was a minor miracle. Particles just distributed themselves in a diffraction pattern for no apparent reason. That's what it looked like when they first did it. Their viewpoint was put particles through a hole, they're going to hit the screen behind the hole. That's the way particles work. And the fact that when they were put there one at a time, they ended up with a diffraction pattern was something that was impossible. And it's trying to do something that's impossible is the way you get the experiment to actually point its finger at it not being physical. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to back, the rendering engine, if you will, the virtual reality rendering engine. We're trying to back it in the corner where, in order to get out of that corner, it's going to have to point a finger at something that is impossible from a materialistic viewpoint. So that's not an easy thing to do. It's a very hard thing to come up with. Physical experiments are really good at showing things physical. They're not all that good at pointing fingers at things non-physical. So we have a few that we think might do that, but we'll learn as we go. Traditional quantum mechanics would look at these experiments and probably say that most of them won't work. And they may not be right. We don't know, but traditional physics has now had 100 years to get this and hasn't gotten it yet. So that means traditional physics can't really be relied on to tell you what's right and what's wrong, about these things. So that's the problem. That's why we're working on it, because there's a lot about quantum mechanics at the very fundamental level that is just unknown. So then the things that the physicists who work with quantum mechanics do, they're based on a fundamental ignorance of how it works. Matter of fact, I saw a video. I'd like to find it again of an older gentleman. Don't even remember his name, but he was a very high profile physicist. He had Nobel prizes in his pocket and other sorts of things, and he was discussing quantum mechanics, and he said that one day we're going to understand how quantum mechanics works, and when we do, it's going to be a totally different perspective at looking at the problem. And when we do, it's going to be simple. We'll look at it and say, oh, why didn't we think of that? And when it happens, his words, it'll probably be a graduate student that figures it out. And why would he say that? He says that because he knows that physicists get, kind of all committed to their beliefs of the way things are. And the longer you're doing something, the harder it is to think out of the box. So the people who think out of the box the most easily are the very new people who are just getting into it. When they walk into it, they have not yet been indoctrinated into the way it must be. That allows them to think outside the box and come up with ways that are outside of the way it must be. So his prediction was it'll be somebody on the periphery of science, somebody maybe who's not even a physicist, somebody who's looking at this from a totally different viewpoint, and it's going to be simple and it's going to be straightforward. And I think he's probably right on that, because for 100 years, physicists are trying to understand why you should best describe particles as probability distributions. And as who am I thinking of now? The eminent physicist said, I'll come up with his name in just a second. He said that that this double slit experiment has the fundamental issue about understanding quantum mechanics. If we could understand it, we could understand all of it. Feynman, Richard Feynman, he's the guy I'm quoting. Well, I'm not exactly quoting, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like this. He also said that we will probably never understand how quantum mechanics works in the normal sense of the word understand. In other words, we'll never have a classical material-based understanding of how it works. And that, I think, is true. We won't, but we might have a virtual reality understanding of how it works, because that's this different perspective that they were talking about, and it has at least a chance. So the way I look at it, if traditional physics looks at my work and says, oh, that'll never work, that means I have a chance of getting it right. Because if traditional physics said, oh, yeah, that's just the way we think about it, I wouldn't have any chance at all of getting it right. So it doesn't bother me that traditional physics kind of, looks at what I'm doing and doesn't agree with it. Traditional physics doesn't understand how quantum mechanics works. Now, they know how to compute, though, and they've done a lot of research. And the work they've done is very, very good. And some of the places where I disagree with them, they are probably going to be right, because they have this huge body of experiments that they can look back on and see how that might work. But anyway, we're going to do this. We're going to learn from it, and it's going to be fun. And hopefully out the other end is going to be something that's really dramatic and special that'll help us, do this. But we won't know unless we do the work to get there. And we can't do the work to get there until we can afford it. And you guys out there who've helped, support us are going to make it all possible. You see, without that, well, you can't even start to work on the problem. At least you're getting this thing go. Nobody knows at this point, but at least because of you, it's going.
I don't remember who said it, but I remember growing up at one point, they said that the ultimate response to a scientific experiment is not eureka, it's, huh, And I always thought that was a good lesson to think of, that the outcomes are oftentimes very kind of mystifying, and those are actually good because it leads you to where you need to be going next. So speaking of going next, we do have to go on to our next question. Vanessa, what's up?
Okay. I love the comments and everything that's coming in. You guys are funny. Claudio, I promised I would ask this question. So Claudio wants to know, Tom, what's your higher self doing while you're here on Earth? Is it also doing research?
Well, now that's a tough one to answer, what my higher self is doing. It's not really like you have this, you have yourself, your what I'd call free will awareness unit, your piece of consciousness that's making choices here. And then you have this higher self that is completely different. It's like that, I guess, in the beginning, and it's like that maybe for most people. Now, I call that higher self the individuated unit of consciousness is my name for that. It's kind of it's that part of your consciousness that does the accumulation function of all of the experiences that you've had. But it's the free will. It's a free will awareness unit. It's the conscious making choices here that's really in charge of what happens here. But what we do is as we grow and get older and learn to let go of fear and to be more caring, we begin to integrate our free will awareness unit, with a bigger picture, with a larger piece of consciousness. So I'd hate to really put it into boxes like here's the free will awareness unit and over here's an individuated unit of consciousness. All those things are metaphors. They don't really exist. Don't take those literally. They are metaphors that are there to give a name to a function. And if we don't use metaphors and give names to functions of consciousness, we can't have a conversation about it. So those things are really not literal things. They're metaphors for functions of consciousness. So it's kind of hard to say what is my metaphor for that individuated unit of consciousness doing. We tend to work together. My viewpoint, I tend to live in a larger reality frame. I don't really meditate anymore. My life is a meditation. So I'm connected to the feed I get that defines this virtual reality, but I'm connected to a couple other feeds at the same time. And if you want to name that, give that the metaphor of higher self, then I'm getting information from multiple sources all the time. It's just the way it is as you get a bigger picture. You have more choices and you have more data coming in. So it's not anything particularly special that my higher self or individual unit of consciousness is doing. It's just part of the package. It's doing whatever it needs to do to keep this ball rolling. And I have, as I say, multiple data feeds that give me information. I'm not told what to do or how to do it. It's not like I get information out of the conscious system to do these experiments. I may get nudges that experiments need to be done, but I'm expected to figure them out, just like figuring out the information in the My Big Toe books. I did not take dictation from non-physical sources. I basically had to figure it out, because if I didn't figure it out, it wouldn't be mine. It would be somebody else's, you see. And I have to explain it, and you can't explain something that's not your own. You have to own it before you can talk about it and explain it. So that's why you have to do all the work yourself. It's not like you get the answers. Now, I may get a lot of answers about other things, but as far as the work I have to do here, that's mine to figure out on my own. And it works like that pretty much for everybody. Now, other things, sure, I get answers. I get information all the time that is not available just in the physical realm. But that's normal as you let go of your fear. That just happens.
Yeah, I've kind of, I've experienced in my life, it almost seems like there's a part of me that knows better what I need to do than I do, that almost goes ahead of me. Like getting laid off from a job at one point, I remember I was just devastated. I'd been laid off from this job, but then it led me to something that made my life a whole lot better. So it almost seemed like there was something, that was laying the groundwork ahead of me. I just couldn't see it happening.
Yeah. Well, we have a metaphor and a word for that too. We call it intuition.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be much wiser than me. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's usually true. If you've really worked with your intuition enough that you can count on it, that you pay attention to it and don't just blow it off as silly or nonsense, then you'll find that it is a lot smarter than you, because it's not limited to the information that you're limited to, and it's not limited by the logic that you can think of. It's got fewer limitations than you do, so it can come up with better answers. But you have to be careful and have to be skeptical. You still have to make your own choices. You can't just, I got a message from the great beyond, I'll just go do that. That's not a good thing. You still need to look at it and say, do I really want to do that? Is that the right thing? And if no, doesn't matter where it comes from, leave it alone. So it's always your responsibility to make your choice, and you always have to be skeptical. And the thing you have to be most skeptical of is yourself.
Yeah, I hear that. All right, Vanessa, what's our next question?
Yes. So Naomi has a question. Naomi attended your MBT at TMI, and she's asking, Tom, for someone like yourself who studied consciousness with the depth and breadth that you have, can you please tell us, what is your consciousness doing at night while you're sleeping?
Okay, would you repeat that? Your voice dropped out there in the middle, and I didn't get the whole thing.
Yeah. What is your consciousness doing at nighttime while you are sleeping?
Oh, what am I doing at nighttime while I'm sleeping? Well, it varies. It just depends on what's going on with me at the time. Sometimes I do just like everybody else. I lie down, I go to sleep, and when I wake up, it's like no time's gone by in between. I don't do anything. I don't dream. I don't do anything else. Other times I do just the opposite. I lie down and I never go to sleep. I'm functioning in other reality systems most of the time, and I just lie there. And when that happens, I'm not, I don't twist and turn. I'm not restless. I don't keep rolling around or anything like that. Matter of fact, in those times when I don't sleep at all, I lay almost perfectly still and don't move a muscle for the whole night. So I'll be lying maybe on my back, and if I get into one of those altered reality things that I get into sometimes at night, morning will come, and I'm aware of it. I'm aware when the light starts. I'm aware of what's going on in my environment if I look at it, but I'm still plugged into other reality frames, and I will not twitch a hair on my head until it's all over and I get up in the morning. So those are kind of interesting things. And when I get up, I'm fully rested. The body's had a very thorough rest, and I don't feel tired at all. So that's kind of the opposite thing. And then sometimes I just go to sleep and I have dreams, and like everybody else, and I wake up and I generally remember them and can assess them. And sometimes they're meaningful, and sometimes they're just silly and don't really have much import to them. So it's not just one thing. When I sleep, it could be any number of experiences. That night they come varied.
Before we move on to the next question, Vanessa, I just kind of want to let everybody know about the upcoming events. Could you give us a little rundown on those?
Yes. So if we don't, and we won't have time to address everyone's question here today, then on Saturday, June 2nd, we will have another Q&A at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the one following that will be June 4th, and that will be with Shaz Khan. And then we will have a couple more coming up. So the next one following that will be June the 5th with Teresa, who is also a physicist. I don't have the time, but that'll be the next day. And the following day on June 6th, we'll have Nancy McMonagle from the Monroe Institute.
So if you haven't figured it out, we have reached our minimum, but we're not stopping. We're going to just keep on doing this for the next couple of weeks. We would love to be able to get realistically, at least double what we're getting. So please be sure and continue to contribute. Tell your friends. We're getting some good numbers starting to show up. Did we just lose Tom? I just lost Tom.
Yeah, I lost him too.
Well, above my head or below my head, I'm registered as Tom. I could answer for him for the rest of the hour if we want, but it's probably not a good idea. Is anybody in the audience, can somebody log on and find out what our total is? If I do that, I'll get a feedback loop, but I think we were around 170,000. And by the way, to the people that keep mentioning Joe Rogan, that's one of the ones that I've been trying to get going to. I actually did reach out to Joe on his website, but I didn't hear anything back. So still making the attempt, but that's a great suggestion. And the Elon Musk one, we get that one a lot. I don't know that we've reached out to him or not, but I know if I was Elon Musk, I probably would have about 50,000 people reaching out to me on a daily basis. So this is likely not going to be something that's going to get on his radar instantaneously. But once we get this thing up and going, then I'm sure we'll see a lot more interest coming from people like him. And obviously, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson and some of the people that are starting to entertain this. So, and Keanu Reeves, I see. Yeah, he'll be quite interested into what's going on and how this is going to work. So, what is it? 170,700. All right. Well, let's see if we can get this over 200, maybe up to 300 before we go. Be able to get halfway has been. To be where we're at halfway is a great thing. Absolutely. So
yeah, Scott, you mentioned Elon Musk, and yeah, I hear that all the time as well. We have actually reached out to Elon. We had somebody approach Elon and give him a copy of My Big Toe, and so yeah, so that has been done, and we're waiting to hear back. Who knows? But yeah, we have done that. So yeah. We, in fact, I reached out to Joe Rogan because one of his first guests back in the day was Bruce Lipton, who's obviously part of this whole crew, and they had a great chat. So I thought that this could be something that Joe gets. But again, Joe's kind of one of those guys that probably has a million people trying to reach out to him on a regular basis, but certainly in his realm of interest. So we'll have to see. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I can see you now. I can hear you now. Somehow it just the whole from booted the browser, and here we are again.
I thought maybe you'd gone off to a different consciousness level and just kind of left us behind on this one. So. All right. Well, while we're at it, then why don't we grab the next question, Vanessa?
Okay, I'll just ask a real quick one that Cheryl you had. Cheryl was at the last MBT Immersive, and she was saying, Tom, if your experiments go according to your predictions, then you are able to provide the long lost toe that Einstein was searching for. Are you going to continue mentoring and training new teachers?
Okay, I got about 30% of that. Try again, see if I get the rest of it.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll get the parts that I didn't get last time.
Okay. Cheryl just wants to know, once you are able to show your long lost toe, as she calls it, the one that Einstein was looking for, and you become very well known, are you still going to mentor and train us individuals like you're doing right now?
Yeah, well, if that comes to pass, then yes, of course I will, because that's really what it's all about, is people. That's the thing, the way we're going to evolve, the way we're going to change things here on this planet is every individual growing up, and an individual has to grow up themselves. You can help by providing an environment that makes it easy for them to grow up, and if I can do that in any way, I will be doing that. So yes, the interaction with people will go on no matter what else happens, because that really at the bottom level is what it's all about, is individuals growing up. So to walk away from that one just wouldn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Right, makes sense. Okay, so there's another question here from Emmy around free will. This comes up quite a bit around with your work. So Emmy's saying, hi Tom, could you please relate free will to the path that we must go through in this life? It is truly free will if we must learn certain aspects or behaviors. I understand that in order to evolve and continue to exist, we must lower our level of entropy. Even so, isn't it contradictory that we are free, but the LCS limits us in certain aspects? He goes,
No, no, it's not. Free will is free will. You always get to make your own choice. Now, we're always limited by all sorts of things. You know, if you do bad things and get put in jail, well, you may not be able to go home for Christmas. You know, you may have to stay there. Well, that's a limitation, but it doesn't take away your free will. Free will isn't the ability to do anything you want. That's not free will. Free will is the ability to make a choice. Out of all those choices you have, you get to pick one. So here's a crossroads that you get to, and you can go down road A or road B, your choice. And the system will never jump in front of you or force you to take any of those, to take, the first road or the second road, your choice. So when it comes to whether you grow up or not, whether you evolve or not, your choice. If you don't evolve, you don't grow toward becoming love, you don't get rid of your fear, your choice. Matter of fact, you can make all kinds of really bad choices and you can de-evolve. And that's fine too. That's your choice. The system doesn't set, never makes your choices for you. You leave this virtual reality, whether you come back or not, it's your choice. Where you might go with some other virtual reality, it's your choice. It's always your choice. You're not forced to make a choice by the system, ever. That would be contradictory to the system. But are there limitations to your choices? Yes, there's always limitations to your choices. Lots of things limits the choices we can make. In our capitalist society, how much money you have to spend limits the choices that you can make. You see, but it doesn't limit your ability to grow up, because growing up has nothing to do with spending money. So it's that sort of thing. Yes, many limitations, but you get to make the choice of your, you get to make those choices that you want to within those limitations. So if you're in jail and it's Christmas time, well, you might join the other inmates with a little celebration. You might drink the eggnog or not. You might, decide to stay in your room. You might decide to write a letter. You may decide to make a phone call. You got all kinds of choices you can make, but you can't go home. But you have free will to make all the choices you have. So that's all free will is. It's just to make the choices within that set of choices that you know of, that you can make. Nothing more.
Yeah, I know after this particular virtual rally, I'm just going to take a long vacation, just kind of hang out, take a long rest. It's an exhausting one for all of us, but we'll, and I also like the interesting thought about, Tom, that, that there's other ones that we can experience. There's other realities, because it seems like if this was the only one, that would be kind of a waste.
Oh, yes. Why put all your eggs in one basket? Right? There's other realities, and other realities have their own little differences and their own rules, and you get to interact and grow and make choices in any of them. Matter of fact, we already make choices in more than one reality. The dream reality is a second reality where we have experiences and make choices, and they are just as important. The choices we make in those dreams are just as important as the choices we make here as far as our growth goes. So there are multiple realities that we operate in, and besides that, there's other realities, other virtual realities that are very much physical, like this one, which means they have a tight rule set with lots of rules that define, all the energy exchanges that can possibly take place. So there's lots of other opportunities to do other things, and often the grass seems greener on the other side of the fence, but rarely is it that much greener, because the other side of the fence is just the other side of the fence. And if you're having issues here, you'll probably have issues everywhere, because the issues are yours, not the environment that you pick.
All right, Vanessa, what else have we got?
Okay, so Tom, this is a question from Fred. He's asking if you've checked on an IUOC, an individuated unit of consciousness, just to bond with and see how they were doing, since you interacted with the free will awareness unit, part of them that was playing here. And he wants to know the answer to that.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand that. Do I? I'm a free will awareness unit is what I call the consciousness is making choices in this virtual reality for me. And is the question, do I also go interact with the individuated unit of consciousness at the same time? Is that what he's asking?
Yeah, he's asking if you've checked in on an IUOC to bond with and see how they were doing. I've heard you share a story around you doing that one time. I don't know if you want to share that here, but.
Oh, well, I do that a lot. Sure. Whenever you heal somebody, healing is one of the things you can do with your mind. Your intent modifies future probability. There's a whole lot of uncertainty around biological things because our biology is so complex. It has so many factors and so many variables that it's uncertain what might happen. People have stage 4 cancer, 3 months to live, and they wake up the next morning and don't have any cancer at all. Now that's a rare event, but it happens. So there's lots of uncertainty in biological systems. That's why it's easier to heal than maybe do other paranormal things, because there is so much uncertainty. It's an easier thing to do than, say, remote viewing, which isn't terribly hard, but a little more practice and skills needed there. You can probably learn to use your mind to heal people, in a matter of months, 3 or 4 months. You can get decent at it. You won't be really good at it that fast, but you'll be, you'll have some effects anyway that you'll be able to notice. So that's an easy thing to do. So yes, I do that a lot. IUOCs that have problems, that they need some calming, or they need, other things. They need things fixed, health issues. You can go interact with them in many ways. You can interact with them telepathically, just talk to them. You can counsel them. You can have conversations. You can use your intent to modify future probability for them. You can find out, what they're thinking, and have, like I said, conversations about things that matter to both of you. There's lots of things you can do to interact with other IUOCs. You're thinking that story you wanted me to tell, Vanessa, is a story where there was an IUOC that was going to be my grandson. And I should say it actually is my grandson now, but that IUOC came here, found a grandson with almost no diaphragm, unable to breathe, and had a very low life expectancy at that time. And this IUOC took the attitude of, that's not what I bargained for, because the ones that do survive this process often are retarded, blind, deaf. They have lots of issues that they have to deal with. So this IUC said, that's not really what I bargained for. I think I'm just out of here. I'm not interested in pursuing this, because it's really wasn't on my plan that I wanted to go through that. And so he was just hanging around waiting for the end to come, because he was ready to go. Do something else, he didn't have any investment in it yet. This baby had just been born. So there was no investment of his time and energy in this particular avatar yet. But when we tried to heal Memphis was the little boy's name. When we tried to heal him, it just didn't work very well. It's like the energy wouldn't stick. The energy was not accepted. It was refused, because the entity didn't want to go on, didn't want to be healed. And it got to a point where there was so much, I guess, caring and love sent his way, trying to heal him, trying to work with him. And I'd talked with him probably every couple of days. I just go have a chat with him and see, what he was thinking and what was going on. And if I tried to do any healing, it would be rejected, just like it was with everybody else. But he got to a point where he decided that there was a whole lot of love in the world, because there were really hundreds of people trying to help him. And that changed his mind. And when it changed his mind, he turned around on a dime and did the impossible. He breathed for several days so that they could do an operation on him. You see, the problem is he was on heart-lung. The machine was breathing for him and oxygenating his blood for him. But when you do that, you have to take blood thinners. Otherwise, your blood will clot in the machine and kill you. So you have blood thinners that make your blood very, very unable to clot. But then they need to do an operation on you, which means, cut you open, with a knife, and you'll bleed to death because you have all these blood thinners. So he had to breathe for himself for a couple of days for the blood thinners to get out of his system before he could have this operation. And when they did the operation, they found out that his diaphragm was almost entirely missing. He had almost 30% of a diaphragm and 70% was gone. So it was just one little flap over on the edge of his diaphragm, and that was it. Now, how that child breathed for a couple of days without being able to move any air through his lungs. And the problem with his lungs were that when you don't have a diaphragm, all your internal organs just don't have a barrier. So they just float on up, your liver and your kidneys and, other stuff just float on up in your chest cavity where the lungs are supposed to be. So the lungs can't grow. They start to grow and they run into things. So they stop. So he had one lung that was just a little nub, an inch or so long, and the other one was less than that. So with no lungs and no diaphragm, virtually no lungs and no diaphragm, he got by until he had the operation, which then at least repaired the diaphragm, and he had to be breathing oxygen all the time because of the lungs. His lungs were so underdeveloped that he could only survive if he had, a lot of oxygen pumped in him all the time. So now he's I think, probably 7-year-old happy little guy. He's not blind or deaf or retarded. He's just a normal little fellow who's a lovely soul to interact with. So that was one where I did a lot of talking to somebody else's IUOC. Yeah, and I recall one where there was a little baby who had brain cancer, and that free will awareness unit also wanted to go elsewhere. Again, no investment yet. And I was able to find a replacement, somebody else that was willing to take that. And I was also able to get rid of the cancer. So that little girl now is, I think, approaching a teenager and is also a very happy little toddler. So you can interact with IUOCs and situations in the non-physical and within the consciousness system because you are consciousness. And this is not like magic stuff, or anything. It's just your consciousness. And once you understand that, you can explore and interact with the whole consciousness system because that's your natural home. That's your natural playground, is the larger consciousness system. It just takes a while to understand how to do it. But you don't have to know anything. It's not like there's some great esoteric knowledge, magic words or something or potions that allow you to do it. The way you learn to do it is just to stop blocking, that possibility. The thing that blocks it is your fear and your beliefs and your ego. And if you can get rid of that stuff, then it's kind of a shoo-in. It's natural to you. That's so it's not really a big deal. It's pretty much a lot of practice and a lot of work. I started working in this line of work when I was probably 27. Okay. I was 27 years old when I first met Bob Monroe. Spent, 15 to 20 hours a week working with him, in his consciousness lab, and then have been working at it ever since. Well, I met Bob Monroe when I was 27. I was like 71, 72. It was in that range. So I've been working on this. I'm 73 now. So you can see from 72, that's a lot of years I've been putting into this. It takes time to grow yourself and get rid of the fear. So it's just, everybody can do it. It just takes time and patience, and you have to be consistent with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Did we lose Tom? Can you guys see me?
I'm here. I can see you. I can hear you.
I lost Tom's visual, but
I can see Tom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of what Hamlet once said, that there are many more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophies. That's the thing that I always think of when I hear stories like what Tom just told. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's just mind blowing. Vanessa, what do we got next?
Yeah, so Ann Kit has a question here saying that if it is proved, so if you're able to provide evidence with these experiments that indicate this is a virtual reality, Then how is it going to affect people who are a follower of religion and believe in God? And do you think religion is a cult?
Well, it's going to provide them with a lot of answers. I was very surprised about the way religious people have reacted to the My Big Toe. I expected that they wouldn't like it, work of the devil and all that sort of thing. I thought that there was going to be a lot of negativity, but I've not experienced that negativity. I suspect that's mainly because a lot of religious people would never read the book to begin with. But I have experienced a lot of positive reaction to it. I have any number of people who describe themselves as very religious, and they love My Big Toe because it answers so many questions. And in their mind, the larger consciousness system is God. They said, okay, you just defined God for me. Now I know what God is. It's the larger consciousness system. And then they work from there, and they were very happy with that. So, and I was on a panel in Atlanta, and it's still out on YouTube someplace. You can get that. And I was sitting in a Unity church, and there were two people there who both associated with that church. That was the venue. We were using their facility, and they were both theologians. They both had PhDs in theology. And I asked them, I said, please tell me, what are the fundamental attributes of God? Leave out all the dogma and stuff. Just tell me what the fundamental attributes. If you were describing, how God was, what were the fundamental things you described? And they huddled together and in a few minutes came back with a list. And everything on their list was also an attribute of the larger consciousness system. So you see, when you get rid of all the dogma and the rest of that stuff that is not really value added, the rituals and so on, you end up with something that's really very compatible with My Big Toe. So that's the neat thing about this philosophy. It's inclusive to everybody. So if you're religious, you can find answers here. And if you're an atheist, you can find answers here. An atheist will say, see, I knew it all along. There is no God. There's just this larger consciousness system. It's a real thing. It's not, what's the word? It's not, it's not any different than any other real thing. It's evolving. It's not perfect. It makes mistakes. It's a real, there's a word I'm missing here, but anyway, it is not supernatural. That's what the word I'm looking for. It's not a supernatural thing. It's a natural thing. So the atheist sees his redemption, his validation of his beliefs, and so does the theist. Both of them can look at My Big Toe and see that it answers both of their questions. That's the point of it. When you have a bigger picture, everything else is derived from the bigger picture, you see. So, people come up to me all the time and say, Tom, I've been studying Zen Buddhism for 20 years, and you sound like a Zen Buddhist. And I hear the same thing about the Kabbalah, about the Gnostics, about, indigenous people and tribes. I hear it about all kinds of things. That they have that, and that's because there's only one truth, but there's thousands of ways you can approach that truth. So if you really have a big picture, then it needs to explain the facts, subjective facts as well as objective facts, to all people. Whatever your experience is, the core truths ought to all be the same. So that's, so no, I wouldn't say that I've had a lot of people do that, but I've probably had a couple of dozen who were very religious and found My Big Toe to be good. Matter of fact, I had one lady that says, everywhere I go, I take two books, My Big Toe and the Bible. And it made me smile, a big smile, just to hear that. So yes, if you add to religion all of the dogma, all of the other things, that comes along with it, then that kind of distracts from the spiritual message. But another thing, talking about religion, that I should mention is that was a big surprise for me. You see, I came up the science route with as a physicist, And before I met Bob Monroe, and before I learned how to meditate and do my debugging my software with my mind instead of using my eyes to look at it, I was, I probably fell in the atheist group myself. I thought that people who believed in a religion were just soft-headed and, needed something to comfy them. But what I found out was, and it was a big kind of aha and a big smile for me, was that most of the truths that I discovered on my journey in consciousness were also fundamental truths in most of the world's major religions. I talk about, everything is love. The system's about love. And I think there's a Christian quote that says, God is love. Well, that's pretty close. There's the Buddha, who 2,400 years ago said that our reality was just an illusion. That sounds like a virtual reality to me. He also said it was kindness and love and what you can give that was important, and so on. So you look at the fundamental values in religion, and you find they're just not all that different than the fundamental values in a theory of consciousness. It's that was a surprise, because I had this very negative view about very religious people, and I found out that they actually got there before I did. They had these concepts before I discovered them, but they also had a bunch of dogma sometimes that really didn't fit in. But still, that's what people have added to those religions. Somewhere at the beginning anyway, there were some people who really understood the larger reality system. So religion isn't all bad and all dysfunctional, even though it can be very dysfunctional. In Europe, they spent probably 100 years with religions, all fighting each other, trying to kill each other. So that's pretty dysfunctional. So religion can be very dysfunctional, but it also holds some fundamental truths that are worth acknowledging.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because I came to Tom, I came from the theologian background, and actually my brother, who has a PhD from Princeton Seminary, is somebody who has been, studying a lot of what Tom has to say and finds it to be there. Certainly the Eastern religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, have all used Maya or illusion as the way things are. So it's all sort of tied together here. I am noticing we are running late, but the last thing I want to do, Vanessa, could you remind everybody again about our upcoming live streams?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this Saturday coming up, we will be going live for another Q&A with just Tom. And also, if you could comment maybe real quickly here or on the Kickstarter page and let us know what you prefer. If you prefer just this kind of one-on-one with Tom, or if you would prefer to have a guest host. But anyway, this Saturday we will have just Tom, and that will be at 8 a.m. in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. And then moving forward, we'll have one on June 4th with Shaz Khan from Goldcast. That will be at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Teresa, the physicist, on June 5th, and Nancy McGonigal on June 6th.
Awesome. Well, we've got a lot more of these lined up, and if you have not contributed yet, by all means, get on there. We have been funded with our minimum, but we could certainly use a lot more. We don't want to just get an experiment done. It'd be nice to do a lot of these things and really get this thing off the ground. So please do remember to contribute if you haven't, and share all this with your friends. And also remember that when you go on the Kickstarter page, you can subscribe to be alerted whenever we do live streams, so you'll at least be able to know when we're going to do these. We've got about 13 days left, so thanks to the audience for getting us where we're going. This is just so exciting for all of us here and for all of you. I'm sure I've been seeing the comments. Tom, thanks once again for joining us and giving us your wisdom. Vanessa, thanks again for being the middle person amongst our crowd. And we will call it a day for now, but we will see you guys again in just a couple of days. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Well, I hope that the audience got